This is Shout Podcast, the official health and wellbeing podcast from the Firefighters Charity.
Hello, I'm Kim Robson. Welcome to episode 5 of season 2 of the Shout Podcast, a podcast that focuses on health and wellbeing. We take a look at specific topics each time around, speak to experts and hear from beneficiaries. And in this particular episode, it's all about mental wellness. So in this episode, I catch up with the charity's wellness and behaviour change coach, AJ Whitaker, as we delve into mental wellness and resilience and find out what the difference is between the two. We'll be hearing from Kelvyn Thompson, crew manager for Dorset and Wiltshire Fire and Rescue Service, on how the charity helped him overcome a very low point in his mental wellbeing. And AJ will reflect on Kelvyn's story and discuss the qualities that can make someone resilient.
You're listening to Shout Podcast from the Firefighters Charity.
So let's get this episode underway. First up, it's my pleasure to welcome the Firefighters Charity's wellness and behaviour change coach, AJ Whitaker. AJ, what does mental wellness mean and what does it mean to the individual?
This is a massive topic, and I suppose in a nutshell, I would say it's being healthy in mind and body as much as we're able. And then an add-on is actually trying to achieve that ongoing, so you're maintaining your health and in some areas improving it. If I may, I'll just run through sort of a few areas and what it might mean for different people, if that's okay.
Yes, please do.
They sort of split it into maybe 6 or 8 different areas in your life. So you might be looking at your emotional wellness, your physical wellness, your intellectual, your environment that you're living in. There's going to obviously be an element around financial matters. Also what your occupation is and where you sit on that continuum, and if you're happy with where you are. Then there's a whole social element and construct around that. And then you might also have a spiritual aspect to your life. All of those are interlinked and they'll be different for everybody. So if we also look at the physical aspect of someone's well-being, you may have somebody who has had COVID, has got quite a lot of pain, struggling with their breathing, for example. So for them, being able to actually have a day where they're managing their energy levels, they're managing their pain, they're managing their breathing, that might be a really good day for them. However, you also might have somebody who's really fit, who running a marathon in a day, for them, actually links into their mental wellness and they're feeling really good. So depending on where you are in the spectrum, your individual wellness and mental health will be based on how you are. Please don't compare yourself to anybody else. If we also look at, say, some of the spiritual aspects of life, and again, this also links with emotional, also links with the occupational, is if, for example, your working life, you've still been at the stations, you've still been crewing, you've also been volunteering for other jobs, and there's been a wide variety that the Fire and Rescue Services have done in the last year. You may have got a real good feeling by supporting others. So for you, actually going to work and being in the workplace and helping others has been hugely beneficial. For other people, they might have found the working situation really, really difficult, or being furloughed really, really difficult. So again, depending on where you're sat, depends on how you're going to feel. So a bit of self-reflection around these various areas in your life can be really helpful, and they do mix together.
Some of the stuff that you were talking about when you were picking up on the different areas, a lot of it sounded like resilience. So what is resilience and how's that different to mental wellness?
You're absolutely right that the similarities are many, but there's also some fundamental differences. With resilience, it is something that you can learn, you can nurture, and in a sense you can train and develop yourself in. In essence, it's about being able to bounce back. and shift your way of thinking when something crops up that is going to catch you out. So that bouncing back element is I think one of the fundamental differences between what we're considering wellness and what we're looking at with resilience.
What are some of the challenges to mental wellness and resilience then?
With a fire and rescue service, there are many. If we look at, for example, the organisational changes that go on, we can be comfortable in our role, in our occupation, where we're sitting, and then all of a sudden we've got a new manager, slightly different approach, it all changes. One of the other ones, and actually if we look at the last year, or if we look at other significant changes like retirement, for example, how you approach it, some people view retirement as a disaster waiting to happen. What on earth are they going to do? All their friends are at work. Whereas others will view it as freedom. So your mental place of where you sit and walk into that will be different, and that will give you a different outcome. But actually you can prepare for it in advance. So if we're looking at being resilient to retirement, you can start preparing not only your financial well-being, but actually you can also look at how am I going to be socially sufficient? How am I going to have the friendships, the hobbies to fill the void the work is going to leave? And that you can train for.
So let's find out more from one of our beneficiaries, Kelvyn Thompson. Kelvyn visited Harcombe House back in 2019. Here he explains how he came to visit the centre to get some help with his mental well-being at the time.
You're listening to Shout Podcast from the Firefighters Charity.
So my name's Kelvyn Thompson. I'm a crew manager with Dorset and Wiltshire Fire and Rescue Service at Christchurch Fire Station on White Watch. So I'm ex-military, and in 2003 I served in Iraq in various different roles. An incident in Iraq has stayed with me since then. I found myself struggling with that for quite a few years, and March this year, I don't know why, I don't know what triggered it, but something just hit bottom, and it took everything away from me, and I felt lowest that I have ever felt for what seems like an eternity. It just affects every single day. There are things that can trigger emotions, there are smells, there are noises, but since the time it's strange because it's been small events, it's had small impact on my day-to-day life, but it has affected my whole life. It's affected my emotions, my feelings, the way I've spent my time, both at work and recreationally, and it's always there, and it's always going to be there. This one was just darker than most times. It was a day-to-day incident in the military at that time. It involved children, which as fire and rescue people we see a lot of the time as it is anyway, but this was just something that has just stayed with me. It stayed with a very dear friend of mine until he took his own life, and the impact that has had generally is just taken something from me, and has just left a space, I think, that I wasn't dealing with very well. But March allowed me to actually put my hands up and say for the first time ever that I actually couldn't do this on my own, and I needed some help. And my brigade, although my brigade does have things in place, I don't think there was enough in place, and I needed extra help. And we had a visit from a lady who was promoting the Firefighters Charity, and I don't know why, but there was a reason why I had that card in my wallet. And one Saturday morning made the phone call and filled in the forms, and was contacted very soon afterwards, and was given this this opportunity. I'd got to 48 years old in my life and had spent a lot of the time both in the military and elsewhere looking after other people and kind of putting them first, because it's kind of what you do. And firemen as well as soldiers are the worst ones for it. I always liken it to people moving a mattress. And if anybody can move a mattress, it's a soldier or a fireman, and they can do it by themselves. Doesn't matter how big the mattress is, and they will find a way of dealing with that. But do you know what? Sometimes you just need someone to grab the other end of that mattress, and as fire and rescue service workers, that's something we're really bad at. I was really anxious about coming here just because of going through it all again and having to talk about it all again with someone I didn't know. However, arriving here, right from minute one, the atmosphere is just relaxing. It's very conducive to getting that help that I needed from the location, which is such a beautiful place. It's quiet, it's relaxed. You have got free rein to just wander and find space for yourself if you need to, or be with a group of people if you need to. And then I met my caseworker. I met David Wakely, who just made me feel at ease. The first session that we did was in the office, in the room, and since then we've just gone for walks. We've just wandered, and we've taken the most of this amazing office that David can work in. But then finishing the sessions and going to the workshops that have been provided and understanding how important everything is, pain relief, nutrition, sleep, and how it all works together. And then finishing the day and going back to the bungalows, the accommodation. The accommodation was just second to none. It was just everything, the whole package has been a good place to deal with what I needed to deal with. This is the first time I have ever been through an emotional episode and come out of it safely, as opposed to keeping all of that stuff inside me, which in the past has just built and built and built, and it eventually exploded and took me to this dark place. And I think I've seen many slides this week, a lot of which I can relate to. One slide that just sticks out in my head is one about the guest house, and it is that every single day in the guest house that we own, which is our body and our mind, we will be visited by many emotions: fear, anger, and it's important to open the door and greet them with a smile and deal with that emotion, and then they'll leave. Because if you don't open the door to them, they'll wait outside, and eventually, instead of having one emotion, you'll have 6 or 7 emotions outside waiting for you. And when that door opens, you cannot deal with all 6 of those emotions at once. And it has just been, it's lovely to have blue skies back, not just here but in here, and feeling the sun again, and actually feeling that you can do this, and if you can't, if you're having a bit of a wobble, there's people there that will support you and help you if you're prepared to ask for that help, which I think is the biggest stumbling block with the environment we work in.
So AJ, we've just heard from one of our beneficiaries, Kelvyn, and I would say if anyone has shown resilience and positivity, he has.
Yes, and actually listening to his story and how he has helped himself, and in a way that resilience, learning, nurturing and managing his wellness, if you like, has been an amazing journey for him. And I would say what I've taken from his experience and listening to his experience is that he's managed and coped to work in a very stressful environment, probably by using his psychological muscle, if you will, to nurture it at times and then realise that it's been overworked, and then nurture it and realise it's been overworked. So in a way, his mental wellness, his resilience, that bouncing back and that continued bouncing back was working really well up to a point.
Yeah, absolutely. And when he got to that point, Kelvyn asked for the help, and then he was able to basically improve and help his own mental wellness. What can we do, and what can we take from Kelvyn, what he did, to do that ourselves?
I think from Kelvyn's story, the big takeaway for me as a professional and also listening to him was that initial step of asking for support and help is so difficult. And yet, once you've done it, and I've heard this not only from him but also from others, that first call, that first reach out can make so much difference. It is like unlocking a door to being in a very much better place. And I know I'm emphasising that hugely, but in a way with the charity, our relationship with him started from that first phone call. And in a sense, our relationship helped him draw on resources, nurture resources to get himself back to a better place. That initial contact, that initial reach out is absolutely essential and probably one of the biggest hurdles to overcome. From that, everything else can start to fall into place.
And what are some of those everything else's? What can we do going forward to keep on improving?
There's a bit, I think, about looking after your physical and psychological health through things like being active, looking after what you're taking into your body. Alcohol can be great, but also it can be a disaster because it can be quite a depressant. Looking at how you're managing yourself in your everyday life. There's also something, I think, about your meaning and purpose. And we've mentioned it before about people in the fire and rescue community wanting to help others. If your purpose and meaning in life is about looking after others, it's essential to hang on to that, but also maybe to reflect back that you can offer somebody else a gift by letting them in to help you. There are other small things you can do. Sleep is one of them. There's a whole raft that I could go into, but then I'd start to bore you and everybody else, and I'm not sure that's a good idea.
I think you've given us some great initial ideas, and maybe it's just setting the seed. It's knowing to reach out and make that phone call at first, and then just continue to look after yourself, I guess.
Yeah. I don't know if you ever did those experiments at school where you have mustard seeds and you put them into a dark cupboard for them to grow.
Yes.
In a sense, if you are able to think about it in those sorts of terms, if you're in a dark place, if you're in a dark cupboard, let some seeds in and let them grow. And then you can bring yourself out into the sunshine and into the daylight. And I've always kept that sort of almost simplistic view, because actually a few seeds germinating can be all that you need for some people. Start with one, start with two, add a third, and it can be really effective.
You're listening to Shout Podcast from the Firefighters Charity.
We've got another podcast plus this week. And following on from the discussion with AJ, I've got her top tips on how you can improve your mental wellness and mental resilience. Here's just one of those tips.
All the research shows that sleep is absolutely essential for your well-being in all areas. Sleep is absolutely key. Nurture it.
I'll let you catch up with the Podcast Plus episode to get all the rest of those tips from AJ. As always, you can find out about the topics we've discussed on the Firefighters Charity website. There's lots of links to articles and information. You'll find them at firefighterscharity.org.uk/shout podcast. You can make sure that you don't miss any of these main podcast episodes or the shorter Shout Podcast Plus episodes by subscribing via your usual platform. And of course, any reviews are much appreciated. So coming up on the next episode in a fortnight's time, we're talking addiction. We'll be catching up with a few of the charity's psychological therapists about alcohol and what to do if we find ourselves drinking too much. We'll get to grips with what addiction actually is and how it impacts on others, and of course where to seek help and start making a change. Our content manager Rebecca Pocklington will be speaking to retired firefighter Owen Spears on how he overcame his alcohol addiction. That's all coming up next time. Until then, take care.
Shout Podcast. Please subscribe and review us wherever you get your podcasts, and check out firefighters.charity.org.uk to find out how the Firefighters Charity could support you.
If you liked Shout Podcast, you're going to love My Firefighters Charity, the new social media wellbeing and fundraising app for the fire services community. Packed with great wellbeing content from the expert teams at the Firefighters Charity, you can connect with others, join groups, collaborate and have fun with your fire family friends across the UK. And you can get the advice and help you're after from the Firefighters Charity whenever you need it. Head to your app store, search for My Firefighters Charity and register for free today.